Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of Triangle Offense. I'm Monish, and as always, I'm joined by Nishant, who's a little more perky today since the Lakers picked up a win finally after a few close games and a few defeats and a close game against Celtics again. Finally, a comfortable win against the Hawks.
Back to back, it's coming home.
It's coming home already. So today's episode, I wanted to talk about a team that we will be talking time and again over the course of the season, as we promised in the past as well, the Brooklyn Nets, right? And I was watching the game on Sunday against the Washington Wizards, where a Russell Westbrook-inspired Wizards scored 149 points against the Brooklyn Nets. Now, this is a team that we've told that they could be real contenders. They could be the champions coming out of the East. They could even give the Lakers a run for their money if they go all the way to the NBA Finals. You conceded 147 against the Cavs a few weeks back, or a week back, and you considered 149. Considered 149 against the Wizards. Now, does a championship contender concede so much? This has never happened before, right? And we'll talk all about the stats and all of that. But can a team concede so much and still call themselves a contender?
Statistically, not. And we've spoken about this before, right? In the last 25, I want to say 30 years almost, there hasn't been a single team that has won the chip, which was not a top 11 defense in the league or better.
Yeah.
Like that's minimum.
Yep.
And even then, I think there are like three teams outside the top five defenses each year that won the chip. And I think it's LeBron's Cavs or the Warriors or some such. But other than that, if you're outside the top five in defense, you're already like at a there's like a 90% chance you'll fail, 10% chance you'll get the chip. Forget 11th, 12th, 13th. The Brooklyn Nets are right now the 30th in defensive ability as far as the numbers go. And there are only 30 teams. So it's not looking very great. And this is the stat that blows my mind, right? James Harden, since James Harden's left the Houston Rockets have been, depending on what numbers you follow, the best or the second best defense in the NBA since Harden's departure.
Yep.
And since Harden's arrival in Brooklyn. And yes, they gave up a rim protector and blah, blah, blah. So this is not entirely on Harden. But since his arrival, the Brooklyn Nets have slipped from being the 27th worst out of 30 teams to being the absolute worst out of 30 teams. And it's incredible. Harden's impact is on both ends of the floor. So thanks to Harden's incredible ability at the other end, Brooklyn Nets are on track to become the single greatest offense that the NBA has ever seen. The numbers prove it.
True.
And the absolute worst defense. You can't win championships. What's the saying, really? Or any variation of the saying? Points put fans in the arena, defense wins you championships. It's offense wins you games, defense wins you championships. It's always what they say. Yeah. In the playoffs, defenses are going to get tighter. This offense will be tested. It's going to take a lot more to score those points. They easily can. But playoff wins are also predicated on playoff level defense. I don't think this team can play G League level defense right now. So that's a tough ask. I genuinely don't see them coming out of the East. If this is how they defend, they need to make a move fast. Because it's not a case of they've got some young starlet who will develop over the season. They've got all vets. Yeah. So whatever ability is there right now, it is what it is. You can make some adjustments, get marginally better, sure. But not enough to walk through the playoffs and get to the finals and win it. A team like Philadelphia will walk all over these guys if they play them in the playoffs and they have time to plan and pick you apart game after game over a best of 7 series. It's over. So the answer is no. With this defense, absolutely not. It's atrocious. You're giving up 140. You've not even played quality teams. This 140 concession is against some of the worst offenses in the league. Granted, Cleveland had a decent record. But with Garland out, Colin Sexton alone tossed you on back-to-back nights for ridiculous points that a few years ago you'd only expect to see in an all-star game. I mean, and then the Wizards got a win. Forget what they scored. They got a win on you, despite you being up 5 on them with 10 seconds to go. That's the equivalent in the regular season of having a 3-1 lead in the playoffs and then flaming out. Because what was the stat that he said? It only happened 9 times in history that teams have come back from. So this is a problem. I'll tell you what another problem is. With all of the other teams, we talk about how to figure out rotations, how to have your primary 5, how to have your secondary 5. If your main playmakers off the court, how do you distribute the offense? Who calls the shots? Blah, blah, blah. All of these things are what any squad has to figure out before they have a set system running. And on both ends of the court. Brooklyn Nets, let's not even talk about the defensive end. Even on the offensive end, they have another kind of problem in figuring out rotations. The thing is, they have enough firepower there that any 2 out of 3 combination would make them lethal, capable of beating anyone in the league. Even one of those guys is enough to beat most teams in the league.
Yeah.
Their problem is when all 3 guys are there, who's their alpha? Or if there's no alpha, and if your whole strength is derivative of the fact that there are 3 guys, any of whom can pop off at some point, great. Sounds good in theory. But who's the primary ball handler? Who makes that decision for the team? Often you'll have to put the ball in someone's hands and say, make a play. Either be a Jordan, go get that shot, be a Jordan or a Kobe, somehow or the other, get us to the promised land. Or call a play, run the offense, dictate the flow that gets the ball to the guy that you want to receive the ball to make a clutch shot. I don't think they're very clear on that. Right now, it's just anybody's guess. Anybody's guess, including Steve Nash. Like any one guy on the floor can get the ball and just decide to pop off because they've all been there in their respective teams in the past. That's something Steve Nash has to solve. I don't know if Steve Nash is the guy to solve a problem like this. There's just too many variables right now. I'm not too comfortable about the Brooklyn Nets.
Yeah, every year there is this one team, right, which is scrutinized more than the others. Like last year, it was the Clippers because they made those big trades. Before that, it was the Warriors probably because they had the big 3 on the squad. And any move they made, like you send a player down to the G League, you get scrutinized for it.
Yeah.
What are you doing, kind of thing. And I think Brooklyn Nets is clearly and evidently the team that will be scrutinized for everything that they do this season, right?
Sure.
Like the last play, Kyrie Irving threw it to Cabarro, and it should have gone in. They should have won the game, but it didn't go in. Like whatever they seem to do, that was a 50-50 chance, right? Some days it goes in, you win it, and then nobody talks about this. Some days it doesn't go in. So I'm not even talking about that one thing, but this is happening time and again. They lost. How many games have they lost now? They lost to the Cavs twice. They lost to Hawks. I remember they lost to the Knicks as well, probably. Wizards. Difficult to keep a track, but they losing to these teams that they should not be losing with that star power, with KD, with Kyrie, with Harden. One of those guys, like you said, should be enough. 2 of them, definitely enough. Do you think somewhere Brooklyn sold away the core of the team and that is kind of haunting them and hurting them now? Do you think they were better off at the start of the season with Jarrett Allen, Taurean Prince? Yeah, Dinwiddie got injured. That's bad luck. But Karis LeVert, all of those side pieces were more valuable than what Harden brings to the team. Harden gets you 150, but those other players would prevent the other team from getting 120.
Sure. No, I think that's that would be a snap judgment. That would probably be overreaction. If you have, listen, if at any point in history, if you have a chance, excuse me, if you have a chance to put together Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving, and James Harden on one squad, you put it together. There's really no two. Sure, does that screw up their defense? Yes. Are they in deep shit? It would seem so. Is that fixable? Yes. They can make a couple of moves. They can go pick up a couple of free agents, maybe bring some veterans back, whatever. There's things you can do to problem solve. But a GM would be a fool not to go for it if he has the opportunity to put those 3 together. So I don't think the trade in itself was wrong. Did they have to overpay? Yeah, but I mean, have we not been paying attention? Look what Gordon Hayward gets in this market. Look what Batum's getting paid, or Tobias Harris. And of course, you're going to overpay for James Harden. So none of that is the problem. For me, look, I'm looking at this from the perspective of, I wouldn't be worried if the Brooklyn Nets acknowledged, or even if they don't acknowledge it publicly, they act like they know what's up. Like they know what their deficiencies are. They know what holes to plug. And you see them making efforts to plug those holes. So far, I don't think anyone has that feeling. And it's not just them. I think it's the pundits. I think it's everyone that's writing pieces about the team. We were talking yesterday about, are the Lakers complacent while running it back because they're the champs?
Yeah.
Maybe they are, maybe they're not. But at this point, I'd probably say a safer bet would be to say there is some level of complacency in Brooklyn among the fans, among the players, among the analysts, that it's these 3, like they'll get it done. No, they won't. No 3 are guaranteed anything unless they put in the effort, make intelligent moves, make adjustments, figure out their rotations. It's a team sport at the end of the day. Um, and that's what worries me. You remember how last season Kyrie Irving said it's him and KD, like we don't even need a coach.
Yeah. Yep.
That's arrogance mixed with complacence mixed with I don't know what else. And it's sure dumb to even say it. It's just stupid. You need a
Yep.
coach, not because you need to be taught the game of basketball. You need a coach to take a macro level perspective, see the things that you're not seeing when you're busy playing your game, and doing all of the homework, groundwork, running drills, getting the whole team in shape, including your supporting cast that helps you shine. You need a coach for so it's just dumb. But what it tells you is there's at least one player on that team, and maybe there are more. He's the outspoken guy, so you know what he's thinking all the time.
Mm-hmm.
That think they're just too good for the league. Like, we don't need a coach, we don't need a diva, whatever. We'll outscore, we'll drop 180 on every week. No, you won't.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd probably ask this question of the Brooklyn Nets: are they maybe complacent? You saw that play at the end of the Wizards game where Beal makes a ridiculous shot. That's a tough deep three.
Yeah.
And the Nets have to inbound the ball. It's a tight game. They conceded a three, fine. All you have to do is get a ball to a guy. Just like Kyrie got fouled, he's going to get fouled. And they put him on. They put a bunch of guys on just to shoot free throws at the end, right? They put Cabarro on because he's a better free throw shooter and all of that. So just inbound the ball safe, clean. You're bound to get fouled. You get a couple of free throws, seal the game. How many mad threes are they going to hit back to back, right?
Right.
The way, and great hustle play there, the way the Wizards got the ball, it should have never happened.
Yep.
Like the Nets went to sleep. That was the ultimate complaint. And that's where I feel their arrogance is sometimes getting the better of them, because there's no way players of that caliber took it. That was like a schoolyard mistake in the most clutch moment possible. A player of that caliber or any player of that caliber on that court makes a mistake like that only when he thinks, "Man, it's the Wizards. Even if they hit a tough shot, whatever, we've got this game." Like they're not even acknowledging the possibility that this game is still within reach. And that's where I start questioning them and the things that they've said in the past. Are they maybe thinking they're too good for the league and they can just stroll their way through to the playoffs? Maybe they can, but that'll be the downfall of them in the playoffs. The day this team starts addressing issues, plugging gaps, working on this, they absolutely have the talent to get it done. So it's just that little gap that we're waiting for them to fill.
So whose responsibility is that to fill? Would it be Steve Nash's responsibility? Would a player need to rise up, like someone like KD rise up and put us a guard down and say that no, we're going to do this more seriously than we've been doing? Who do you think should take responsibility for this? Because there is evidently a lack of a leader, right? Like when you look at the old Golden State Warriors great teams, you had Steph, you had Draymond who would run everything. They were the leaders.
Right.
Every LeBron James team ever, they had LeBron James who would run everything.
Right.
Is there a lack of that leadership in this team? Evidently so, right?
Yeah, I think so. And even if KD, and I've got to assume KD should be the guy to step up here. Even if he does do it, he's going to lead by example and he's going to get the team in the right mindset to respect the coach. But it's still got to be the coach that does a lot of this figuring out. Because it's the coach that enjoys the not involved on the court, macro level view, can be objective about it, can take a look at analytics without any personal or confirmation bias, etc. That's the coach's job. Durant can make it easier for the coach to have control over the locker room as the leader, but it's still the coach's job. Unless you want Durant to do a bit of that, which not saying he can't, but it's not been his style. It's not been his approach. It's a bit like Kawhi Leonard. They're not vocal leaders the way some other players are. Nothing wrong. It's just that's not how they approach the game. So sure, Kevin Durant can do it, but it'll be an aberration. Like you've never seen him do it. I'd much rather look towards the coach to be able to figure this out. Now, if he's on the right track and yet he doesn't have the respect of the locker room, then we know what's up, but also that's a lost cause at that point. But at least we know that. Right now, first time coach, not really ever known for defensive capabilities. Not sure what kind of man manager he is now because he's got to deal with all these egos. Maybe D'Antoni can help there, but again, a guy who's never been great with defenses. So they've got their work cut out. And I think step one is just acknowledging that it is entirely possible that they can be beaten if they don't shore up their defense. If they have even a half, let me tell you this, what did we say? In the last 25 years, like 3 teams, no team outside the top 11 defenses in the league has ever won the chip. With this offense, it's foolish to say we'll outscore any team, but
Mhm.
it's safe to say even if you have a 15th, 18th best defense in the league, you'll get it done. With this offense, yes, that's the kind of gap you
Yeah.
can cover.
Yeah.
But not where they are. You can't be the worst defense in the league and get anything done. Step one is to acknowledge that. Step two is to start going about fixing it. And whatever they do on coaching, I don't think with the current personnel they have enough depth to be able to fix it. They badly need at least one big guy, a rim protector who can also crash the glass and pick up rebounds.
Yeah, that's what I was coming to next. These are all intangibles about being complacent and all of that. Let's look at the tangible stuff, right? The defense is clearly weak. DeAndre Jordan is no longer the defender he once was.
Sure.
So he's clearly the weak link in this team. So who do you think the Nets, or do you even think that they should replace him with some other big guy, some big center that they can get for cheap, because obviously their wage bill is not running any low.
Yeah.
So who are the realistic possibilities do you see?
Yeah, so them getting a player at this point would involve some way of trade because there's not really a free agent available that can
Yeah.
solve their problems. You have a few guards and wings, but there's no real big men available out there. Is Joakim Noah on contract? But again, is this going to be a placeholder? I don't think any
He
real
just
problem
retired.
solver. Yeah. So then you need someone who's an elite rebounder because they're getting crushed on rebounds.
Mhm.
And then someone who can be a rim protector, a classic big man. Like you're fine if that guy provides zero offense.
Mhm.
People like, and I'm not saying they should go for them, but somebody like a Hassan Whiteside or a Dwight Howard,
Yeah.
these guys always had suspect offense, but great rebounders, amazing rim protectors, stuff like that. But they'll have to give up something. So it'll have to, their best chance is a small market team with a great big man that's willing to trade to save wage bill.
Mhm.
Uh,
I think Hassan
Cleveland.
Whiteside is a great thing. I mean, he's not getting
Yeah,
minutes in
correct.
Sacramento. They're playing Marvin Bagley, Rishon Holmes ahead of him.
That's right.
So he's a guy who's sitting on the bench. He might as well help the Brooklyn Nets, right?
Whiteside is prime. Like I'd look at him. I would also look at if wage bill is not a problem and they're willing to pay the kind of luxury tax that Golden State pays, and I think they are for a chip because it puts their brand on the map. Drummond would be an interesting consideration. An A-list rebounder, the best in the league for a while now.
Yep.
Great rim protector, and you dink it into him, he can give you some amount of offense.
Right.
To get him would be spectacular. He comes at a cost. They're probably going to have to trade, maybe give up DeAndre, I don't know. But it's a small market team in Cleveland that would be willing to offload Drummond's payroll.
Right. Given all the big guys they have showed up now in the offseason with the Harden trade, right now they have Jarrett Allen, who's a great player who came from the Nets itself. They have JaVale McGee over there, who's probably also another option for
A
that the
decent
Nets
option,
could
sure.
look into.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, all right, this should be interesting. I think as the days take on, as the trade window closes, I think the Nets will definitely make some moves, especially 1 or 2 losses, and you'll see them running helter skelter to find that big guy for them.
Yeah, I don't know if they look at it the way we do. I still think they think they're just so amazing. But let's see. By the way, that weird expression on my face, the volume just doubled on my mic. I don't know what just happened.
Well, anyway, that's all we have for today. So not much of a problem here.
It's like us to end on a blooper, right? Like always close the episode on a blooper.
And like I say, it's definitely one of the most entertaining teams this season. It doesn't matter whether they're winning or losing, but it's always a fun team to watch when you're scoring 140 or 150. Who doesn't want to watch that? But we'll watch Brooklyn Nets more closely this season. I'm sure that they will come up multiple times every week in every discussion, whether a win or a loss. But as always, great fun doing this with you, and I'll catch up tomorrow.
Cheers. Take care.
Bye.